we are talking chicken, and you thought this was a quilting channel. No, but seriously, for those that have been following along on my cookbook, exciting saga of trying recipes. I don't know if it's that exciting or not, but I have been enjoying sharing what I've been trying out in this cookbook. And this specific brand of chicken, frozen chicken, was recommended in the cookbook. And so one of the recipes I tried last week used this Just Bare chicken, and it's not a brand I had ever used, and it's quite tasty. So I thought, hey, I'm gonna mention this brand, and the ingredients aren't as bad as some frozen foods would be. So we tried this, we liked it. I thought I would share that with you. There is another recipe that I tried in this cookbook too. This might be the last one that I share with you guys for a while because you may be getting tired of my cookbook recipe trials. But the other one that I tried was a sticky chicken and pineapple rice recipe. And we liked it for the most part, but it is almost more of a dessert meal with as much sugar was in the recipe. It was still tasty, but definitely a sweet, sugary dish. So that is my updates for the cookbook. And now we are going to actually move into some quilting content. I have so many fun viewer quilts to share with you. I've got some amazing viewer questions. And let me grab this. I've got a whole pile of quilts I'm going to be showing today, so stick around. For any quilts that I can link to while I'm chatting about the viewer quilts, as well as any quilts that you see in the upcoming video, rather than me saying every time, you'll find the link in the description box. If I can link it throughout the whole video, it's gonna be down there, just so you know where to look. All right, first up, our viewer quilt from Romney L, saying, "Hi girls, I love watching you on Saturday mornings. Congratulations on the new home and studio." Lisa Alexander's quilt entitled Scrappy Celebration was in the April 2023 edition of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine. Her quilt has 56 blocks. I made mine a little bigger. It has 110. I am really proud that all of my peaches are upright. That is an accomplishment. I long-armed my quilt on my Bernina Q24 with Q-Matic. I embroider my name and year onto the front of my quilts. Thank you for designing beautiful fabric and being a total delight. Well, I thought this quilt was beautiful in all of its scrappy goodness. That's an amazing quilt, and then making it bigger, just lovely. Next up, from Rhonda C. Happy Sunday, Nicole and Corey. The quilt I want to share is a test pattern I made for Beverly McCullough called Tea Cakes. I used a treasured strawberry jam jelly roll and canning day yardage. I just love your collections and am always on the hunt for the ones that are out of print. I guess you could say I have a bit of an obsession. Well, I know that I have also been there looking for out-of-print fabrics, and it is a little bit like a treasure hunt. You get so excited when you see just that fabric you've been looking for in a quilt shop, and it's a lot of fun. I remember there was one time where I was in a fabric store that is not close to me. It's a few hours away from me, and I found yards and yards of some out-of-print fabric, and I was so excited to find that fabric. I think I bought all that they had of what was left on those bolts. It was such an exciting find. From Cheryl G. Hello, Corey. Last week, I voted for you to have your version of the Scrappy Irish Chain Quilt sent out to the quilter. Next week, you're going to hear which quilt got sent out to the quilter because there was an overwhelming vote for one of those quilt tops to be sent out. It's been sent, and next week is the week that I'm sharing which one was chosen. So it might be a Scrappy Irish Chain, or it might be something different. She suggested that we could finish our Irish chain quilts together, and here is Cheryl's done. She says, I used a paisley quilt pattern. I love how it turned out. Thanks for pointing us to this pattern. I loved that you shared how to approach getting organized with colors and 2.5-inch square color choices. Cheryl. That was a fun scrappy quilt along. If you missed out on that, I have the videos still here on the YouTube channel, so you can check them out at any time. A great way to bust some of those scraps. Josephine R. says, hello, Coriander Quilt family. Here are 2 lap-sized quilts I made using primarily buttercup and slate fabrics. These projects began years ago when I purchased a charm pack during the State of Maine shop hop. I soon realized I loved the fabric so much that I needed more. So, well, goodness, we've got a little visitor who's popped in. I saw him out of the corner of my eye wandering around the sewing studio, and I wondered if he might come say hi. He's really been popping in nicely these last few videos, hasn't he? And there we go. All right, it seems like he's gonna chill out here for a little bit, so I will keep on reading. Josephine says, so I purchased a jelly roll to allow me to make a project in a bigger size, but the actual project was yet to be determined, and I still loved the fabric and wanted even more, but by that time, the fabric was no longer available in local shops. Etsy to the rescue. I purchased some larger yardage to coordinate, and then I realized I had almost enough to make 2 quilts, so purchased some coordinating yardage from various designers to round out the color selection. I used up every last bit of my buttercup and slate, with the final pieces used in a scrappy binding. No pattern was used for either quilt. My teenage daughter set up the layout, and I just started sewing. Long arm work done by a friend who owns In Stitches Sewing School. Thank you, Corey, for your YouTube videos, quilting inspiration, and fabulous fabric and quilt designs. What beautiful quilts Josephine made. I love seeing those. Karen R. sent in 3 different projects. The first pattern was from the Sew Sampler box from Fat Quarter Shop. I used a charm pack of Corey's. I think it was called Springbrook. I just love the yellows and the light blues. The second is also a pattern from Fat Quarter Shop. It was designed by Corey for their Make-A-Wish charity quilt. I used the background from Beautiful Day and some of the light blues from Springbrook. I also made it bigger to fit my king-size bed. I love it, which is a good thing because I'm never making a quilt this big again. The last quilt was one of Corey's mystery quilts. I used Stateside by Sweetwater, and I think the background with the navy stars is a Lori Holt fabric. This was a fun quilt to make. I'm making the current mystery quilt from my pink scraps. Love watching you. Thanks for all you do for us quilters. I thought it was especially fun to see that heartfelt quilt made with those blue fabrics. I don't know that I've seen one made with so much blue in the quilt, and I thought that was really pretty. All 3 of those quilts were wonderful to see, so thank you everyone who sent in quilt photos. That's our last few quilts for today sent in. As always, feel free to send your viewer quilts that you'd like to have shared here on the channel. The email to send them to is in that description box. It's always fun to see what you guys are up to, and so many different fabrics, patterns, variations, and I just love seeing them. Next up, I'm sharing the giveaway winner for the Sew Sampler box that I gave away 2 weeks ago, and that winner is Cheryl W. Cheryl has already been contacted, and the box is on the way to her, so I hope you enjoy that package, Cheryl. I decided we're going to do a new giveaway right away, so let me pull this up. We are giving away a little smorgasbord of goodies. First up, I have a bunch of Peachy Keen scraps and Blueberry Delight scraps. These are scraps left over from when I made my last Moda Blockheads quilt. So a lot of blues in various shades, 2 different fabric collections, and then of course some of those peachy colors added in with all of those blues. So this stack of scraps, and along with that, I am including the Stash and Store, which is a Fat Quarter Shop product, a Fat Quarter Shop product. I'm including one of those, a journal, this little mini cutting mat. This is going to be crinkly here, but this project bag. And then last, the Summer Memories book by Susan Aki. So this whole little bundle of goodies is going to be given away. You can enter over on my blog. I have the giveaway information typed up over there that you can read through the dates for how long that giveaway is open. And I will contact the winner directly through email. When you enter my giveaways, you leave your email so I can contact you directly. So you'll want to make sure and comment over there on my blog. Comments here on the YouTube comments will not count for entry, so do make sure that you go over to the blog. So that's the new giveaway. And we'll get that Sew Sampler box. Well, the Sew Sampler box is already on the way to Cheryl. All right, let's see. Next up, let's talk about some fireside minky fabrics. This is going to be my coriander. Well, I guess you guys got the chicken also as part of my coriander fun finds, but that's a little bit of an unusual fun find. This is a little bit more expected of a fun find, but I wanted to talk about some of these new fireside minky colors that are now available. The folks over at Moda sent me some of the new colors. Well, actually, these are all of the colors Fireside is currently available in. For those of you unfamiliar with the Fireside, it is a 60-inch wide minky fabric that I really enjoy using for backing smaller quilts. I don't like piecing minky, so I do primarily use it for those quilts that don't need any width wider than 60 inches. But these are the colors it used to be available in, and you're going to see we have many more options available now. And some of them I think work really nicely with my various collections. So we're just going to take a look at some of these here. Move some of this out of the way. So here we have some new yellows. We've got a rusty orange, some different greens. I think this green is really pretty. I could see this mixing really nicely with some of the greens that I like using. And of course this yellow, always a nice choice with many of my collections. With these grays, this gray right here specifically, which is number 23. So 60001 in the color 23. Is this guy right here, and that's just a really nice warm gray. Also this top gray, which is number 58, so 60001, that first section of numbers tells you that it's Fireside, and then the last two numbers tells you the exact color. So this would be color 58. I think that one is going to work really nicely with a lot of my fabric lines. Here are some new pinks, reds, and then into some purples, which I think are really fun. This is a really pretty magenta purple. Not necessarily one that's going to mix as well with my fabric lines, but certainly a pretty color. And then those reds and a pink. On this card, we have some blues, the lighter blues down to the darker, which I think this is a really pretty aqua. Just lots of good shades in there. One of my local fabric shops, Miller's Dry Goods down in Charm, Ohio, they carry a really nice selection of minky fabrics. I don't know if they have any of the Firesides or not. I'd have to check. They also have a great online shop, but they do carry a lot of great minky fabrics. A lot of the Shannon ones, I have purchased quite a few of the Shannons from their website when I don't have time to make a trip over to the quilt shop. And then here are the neutral colors here. We have from the lights to some dark browns here. So whites, creams, really pretty sort of natural color, and then into those browns. So a lot of great new fabrics. You can see what we used to have, and now we've got a lot more colors available to us, and it's so nice to have those color options. And I really do like using the minky. I talk about it a fair amount here on the channel, and I do like using it. All right, slide that to the side. Moving right into viewer questions. We're gonna finish up the video with the $5 pattern for April. Yeah, April. We're moving into April. But first, we're going to take some time to go over some viewer questions. These are always fun. You guys always give me the best ideas for videos, and today is no different. This question just came into me last Saturday and I thought it was fun. Plus I get to chat about this pile of blocks, so that'll be fun too. But she says, it's Ashley Allen. She says, I love watching your videos. I'm brand new to quilting. Welcome. I hope you're here for a while. Quilting is so much fun, and it does seem that once you get bitten by that quilting bug, you are in it for a while. I'm brand new to sewing, and I just have a general question. I have blocks that I messed up and didn't make it into my quilt. What do you do with those blocks that you don't want to toss out, but maybe aren't going to use? I know this is a random question, but it's where I'm at right now in my sewing journey. Do you ever turn those blocks into anything else, or do people just toss them out? The only time I toss out my quilt blocks is if it's really something I just don't like, the fabrics are horrendous, or the block really, maybe the seams are messed up or something that just isn't conducive to working into another project. Then I will let those things go. But for the most part, I hang on to my quilt blocks. I make a lot of different blocks for my test blocks, for my patterns, or maybe I'm sharing a tutorial here on the channel and I'm making just one block. So I end up with kind of a random assortment of quilt blocks, and I just save them, knowing that if I want to, I could put them all into a fun kind of scrapbook of memories quilt, if you will. One tip that I heard years ago that I thought was such a great tip, it's not one I follow, but one I can recommend, is if you are making your test blocks, make them all using coordinating fabrics, not necessarily from a specific fabric line, although you certainly could, but just a cohesive fabric palette with fabrics that go together. That way, over the years, as you're making your test blocks, you end up with blocks that can easily be put into one quilt. You're going to see as I go through some of the blocks that I have here, no rhyme or reason to the fabrics that I've chosen. Often I'm just pulling some fabrics that are close by that I might have in my scrap bin, and that's what I'm using to make my blocks. So I went through these yesterday. I thought they were fun to see. So I'm just gonna kind of quickly go through some of these different blocks here. And he's back. Did you wonder where he went? He was just perusing the sewing room, peering out the windows, taking in the scenery. And now, yeah, he's probably just gonna sprawl on the quilt blocks because I wanna show those to you. And for some reason, cats really do just like being, oh, look, he's being so thoughtful, staying right out of the way. Very good. Okay, so we have a Patchy Stars, which seems fitting because I also have a Patchy Star laying right here beside me. So a Patchy Stars block, this was a tutorial that I shared on the channel a few months ago. These little blocks, I'm not sure, totally random. See, he would. Well, come on over. That's fine. We'll see if he stays over there. You can lay on Patchy Stars. Okay, these little guys, I'm not sure what I made them for, what I had intended them for, but they are cute. This is a Star Twist quilt block, another tutorial that I shared here. This guy is an extra block that I received in a quilting bee, and he has a little bit of a problem right here. There's a hole in this seam, and so I liked this block too much to get rid of, and so I can fix this. The fix I would do would be to remove this center square. Yeah, just come on over, Tigsy. Right in the center. Must be center of attention. So what I will do, Tigsy, you are going to have to move though, buddy. Here, you go right there. What I will have to do is remove that center square and then remove that center square and replace it. And then I can utilize this block. I might have to have him mosey upstairs so he doesn't keep getting in the way. He's fun to see, but he definitely wants to be right in the midst of things, doesn't he? All right, Tigsy, you're going to have to say goodbye to your adoring fans. We're going to go shuttle him upstairs. Hold on, I'm going to pass him off to Nicole. Say bye. All right, there we go.
I'm going to take
He's purring really hard. He's the best purr boy. He has the loudest purrs. Last night, he was laying all the way across the room from me, and Eleni, my daughter, was petting him, and I said, is that Tigsy purring? Because he just purrs so loud. It's so cute. He's the best purring kitty. Frances, she has to purr really quiet. She wouldn't want anyone to think that she was accidentally happy or enjoyed having you pet her, but Tigsy just lets everybody know that he is a happy boy. All right, let's keep looking at some of these blocks here. These are just those wonky log cabin blocks. I shared these in a tutorial video as well. It would be fun to make more of these and maybe put them all into one quilt. These little guys, I was trying out a technique for making these for this quilt back here, this Hourglass Scraps quilt. And it's pieced in a way you don't expect. So I was trying it out to see how it works, and it worked great. So those were some trial blocks for that quilt pattern. This little guy was a Moda Blockheads block that it felt kind of boring to me. I didn't really like my fabric choices, and I ended up replacing them with other fabrics. This was a quilt pattern. I can't think of which one it is right off the top of my head, but I was just trying it out to see if the block worked. This was my original Star Twist test block. So here it is for the tutorial, and then this was when I was testing it out. I did a little foundation paper piecing tutorial over on the Coriander Quilts blog, and this was the block I made for that. Another quilt block pattern I was testing out. And then this is a Patchy Stars block. You guys are going to see Patchy Stars, the quilt, in just a little bit because I'm talking more about the quilt for another viewer question, but this was my test block for the Patchy Stars quilt. Test block for the Wishes quilt. Ribbons all around. This is a Christmas quilt pattern that I designed for Hollyberry, but I really like it in these Sugar Creek fabrics. It looks more like a little happy little girl birthday quilt as opposed to a festive holiday Christmas quilt, and I thought it was really pretty in these fabrics. This little quilt, we're also going to be talking about. You're going to see the quilt that this block ended up being used for. It is the freshly cut mini block and just a little test block for that pattern. This is Wooded Whimsy, which is a jelly roll pattern. This was for a book project. I don't remember the name of this one offhand either, but I was checking to see if the way I was piecing this one works and the way it gets cut down works. It's neat how this one comes together. Blossomville, test block. Rosebud Waltz, test block. This is the same quilt block as, let me find him, this one right here. It just used the panel from Beautiful Day. I wanted to see how that looked if you used that in the center of the block. And I thought that turned out really pretty. For these blocks that I don't remember where they're from, I will try to link to them down in that description box. Some of them escape me. I've got a lot of patterns between my patterns and books and magazines and all the things. Sometimes I don't remember the exact name of the pattern. This was a block in my Chex Mix Quilts book. This is my Beholden pattern. Again, just test blocks. Picket Fence Cottages test block. This is the Lemon Meringue test block. You might recognize this as a smaller version of Barn Star. That's what this is, the first Barn Star. And then these were tutorial blocks that I made during the Beautiful Day Mystery Quilt Along. I have 2 of these. There are 3 others that I made into a table runner. Just a scrappy log cabin block. Panels cut from apricot and ash panels. A cute little cottage block. I don't remember what that was from, but it was something that Fat Quarter Shop did with a Lori Holt book, and I want to say maybe 10 years ago. It's been a while for that. This was a little flower block that I did a tutorial on the Moda Bake Shop blog. Again, this was probably 10 or so years. A little frog block that I made as part of a Burlap and Blossoms. That's the name of the fabric, the quilt pattern company, if I remember correctly. She had a cute, maybe a pattern book that came out that I made a block from. I'll see if I can find that to link to. That's a cute little guy. Probably a Moda Blockheads block that didn't make it into the quilt. Beholden 2, just a little test block for my Beholden 2 pattern. And then this guy is Snowy, test block for that pattern. Little blocks that I have no idea where they came from or what they were for. And then I added this one to my mix. This was from last week's Sawtooth Star tutorial. So just kind of a random mix of blocks, some of them from quite a while ago, and I just keep them all together and eventually we'll see what becomes of them. I wouldn't have any issue throwing all of them into one quilt. I know the fabrics aren't necessarily cohesive. There's a little bit of everything, not everything, but a wide range of things in this mix. But it would just be a scrapbook of memories quilt is kind of how I think of it in my head. Doesn't need to be cohesive, but as you look back, you can remember, oh, hey, I remember making this block at this time in my life and this block when this was happening. So I kind of like that idea. It's a little bit nostalgic to look back at some of these blocks. All right. Let me look at my next question here. We need my big stack of quilts. Well, maybe I'll just bring over a little bit at a time. We're going to start with these two right here. This question comes in from Lucinda. She says, have any of your collections been featured in quilt magazines? Love Saturday morning videos. Yes, I've had quite a few quilts using my fabrics in quilt magazines. And I pulled the first one that I remember having in a magazine that used my fabric line. I had lots of quilts featured in magazines prior to becoming a fabric designer. So I have lots of quilt patterns in magazines. And then once I started designing fabrics, that's when you started seeing patterns in magazines using my fabrics. But this first one used my very first fabric line Prairie. And it's called Cross Stitch. If I remember right, it was in American Patchwork and Quilting. And here it is in the Prairie fabrics. Hopefully you guys can see that somewhat. Let me lay it on the table here. So here it is. I loved making this one. It's so fun to look at these quilts made from Prairie. But cross stitch, I think it was called Star Crossed in the magazine. Oftentimes when you submit a quilt into a magazine, you might have one name for it. The magazine ends up naming it something different. So I think if I remember right, they ended up naming it Star Crossed. My original name was Cross Stitch, and when I released the pattern, I called it Cross Stitch for the pattern as well. So I released the pattern with the Flour Mill fabric line. This is the pattern cover here. And I'm going to hold this quilt up so that you can see it too in Flour Mill. Usually, I don't know how, I haven't submitted a magazine project for a while, but typically magazines will have a set amount of time before you're allowed to release the project on your own. So I would wait a couple fabric lines and then release the pattern. So this is Flour Mill. Cross Stitch is available as a PDF pattern over on Etsy in my Etsy shop. I do still have it available as a PDF, but here she is. It's just a really fun, pretty star chain design. So that is the first one, the Prairie quilt that you saw, the first magazine quilt that I remember having. I don't know that there was any other. I had another Prairie quilt in another magazine shortly thereafter. Those are the two that I can think of off the top of my head that were soonest, the earliest ones. All right, next question comes from Jen Hub. She says, I love spending time with you on Saturdays. You are always so happy and pleasant to listen to. I have a Sundrops charm pack. What quilt do you recommend to make using this charm pack? Your suggestion is greatly appreciated. All right, I designed a charm pack quilt for Sundrops, and it is this quilt here called Kindred. So this was the one specifically designed to use the charm pack for this collection. This is a great one if you want to showcase pieces of fabric because those little frames just perfectly frame your fabrics. It does take a fair amount of time to piece. There are a lot of stitch and flip corners in each of these little frames, but I think it's It's a really pretty quilt, and you can see how nicely those little scalloped picture frames frame out those little charm squares. So that is the one that I designed for the collection, but I also have a free pattern over on my blog called Beautifully Charming, which I think is a great way to showcase charm packs. I made two of these, a red version and a gray version. And you can see how these so nicely, the blocks so nicely frame out the charm pack squares as well. So Beautifully Charming, free pattern. These are beautiful day fabrics. Let's take a look at the gray one also. And there it is in gray. I do have more photos over on the blog where I share the free pattern. But another great one for charm packs. I like a charm pack quilt that is roomy and functional. Sometimes small charm pack quilts are fine too. Sometimes you want something small, but I also like the option of something larger, that a nice throw size quilt that you can really use nicely. So there is Beautifully Charming in gray. I'm going to leave this quilt on the table when I read the next question, because this is a good example of the next question. This comes to us from Aviva Hadass. She says, during the trunk show, I believe I saw diagonal fold lines, which made me assume that you also figured out how to fold to the right size for your shelf. Can you share the process? Mine are a folded mess. So here you can see one of the diagonal lines, well, a few of the diagonal lines that she's talking about. And I have to say, this is probably a frustration of mine right now. When we moved, Nicole and I refolded all of my quilts on the diagonal. This is supposed to be a better way to store your quilts because it doesn't put as much, from what I understand, as much tension on threads that are running across. Since it's going across a whole bunch of threads, bias is generally a better way to store quilts so that they don't wear down on your fold lines. I had also heard that when you get your quilts out from having them folded in this manner, that the fold lines would just fall right out of your quilt, and it wouldn't, they wouldn't stay as long as they do when you fold them horizontally and vertically. So I thought, great, we're moving. I'm going to need to transport all of these quilts. Now is the time to refold my quilts using the best folding method possible. So we did. Since getting over to our house and getting quilts out to share, and I even have some hanging in my sewing room, these folds seem to be more aggressive, and I don't know if, I don't think that they are stacked any heavier, that there's any more pressure on the folds causing them to crease more firmly or anything like that. In fact, they are folded on shorter stacks and stored than what I would have had them stored previously. So I don't think that they are, you know, getting pressed more firmly. But these creases are not coming out nicely, and they just feel more aggressive to me. So we are actually folding them horizontally and vertically as we stack them away. So as I get them out and share, like this one, now this one is going to get folded using my previous method, which is just a regular, you know, horizontal, vertical fold, and stored away. And it might be a better option. Maybe I should be sticking with that diagonal folding, but I just feel like these are so aggressive. It's an aggressive fold. But if you want to store your quilts this way, there are lots of YouTube videos that will show you how to fold your quilts diagonally that you can watch and then fold this way. Another way that I've heard about storing, but it's just not super feasible for me to utilize this method, is just to roll them onto pool noodles and store them that way, which that would potentially be a great option because it wouldn't, I don't know how the quilt would be against the plastic. That would be one thing I would want to look up first before I could recommend that, is if you would have any trouble with your quilt against that plastic. Is there color transfer? Is there any weird chemical things that happen? Sometimes, you know, things happen that we don't want to happen. So I'd want to check into that, but it would avoid the creases. So for my quilt storage for the time being, horizontal and vertical folding is what I'm going to do. But if you wanted to store using the bias, you know, folding on the diagonal, there's lots of YouTube videos that show you how to do that. So that's my story. Like, look how bad that is. That's my story about these folds. And maybe I'm gonna, you know, come back in a few weeks, a few months and have a completely different opinion about these folds. But that's where I'm at right now. Okay. Next question from Diane Dunham. Hi, Cori. Question. Do you ever use wide back fabric in your quilts? At a guild meeting, someone said you should not use wide back fabric for small piecing due to it being woven more tightly when manufactured. Any thoughts on this? I love using wide backs for backing fabric. I have had wide backs in various collections and I love it. I hate piecing backing. I think it's my least favorite thing to do in quilt making. Once I'm done with the quilt top, I don't want to do any more piecing on the quilt back. I love the way they look. I just don't want to do it by the time I get there. So I do really like using wide backs for backing on quilts. For the wide backs that have a higher thread count, which some of them do, I would not want to do handwork with them. So I wouldn't want to use wide back on my quilt if I was hand quilting it. I wouldn't want to use wide backing for binding if I'm hand binding, because it is harder to get your needle through a higher thread count fabric. If I were piecing on my sewing machine, I wouldn't have concerns piecing with higher thread count fabrics on my sewing machine, but for handwork, it is not as nice. Sharon Summers asks, I have been wanting to make your pattern Patchy Stars. Here's where we're going to talk about Patchy Stars. She says, I was wondering if you would be willing to do a mock-up of it using Callie & Co. I enjoy watching the sewing space video and loved it. I'm excited for you to get a new area to sew. Thanks for sharing with us. Thank you so much for your question, Sharon. Sharon, I have met in person and she is just a delight, and it was fun to see your question coming in. So for those of you, I have a tigsy hair on my nose. I keep feeling a little tickle. Whew. For those of you unfamiliar with Patchy Stars, you saw the block. When you put the blocks together, it creates this really fun star in the sashing. This is my original Patchy Stars quilt. It was made using Springbrook. I do have Patchy Stars available in my Etsy shop. I think it's just as a PDF. Let's look at this up here. So here's what this looks like. Patchy Stars. And then I'm going to have Ryan put Patchy Stars up on the screen using a Callie & Co. I did go ahead and mock it up using Callie & Co. so you can see what it would look like. Now I would play around with it just a little bit more. I'm not sure if I would choose that medium blue color for those stars or not. I'd want to try out some different colors and give that a little bit more thought. But this does give you an overall look of what it would look like using Callie & Co. I also, in the mock-up, did not include any of the dark grays, and you might want to put those in. But that is just an example of what it could look like in Callie & Co. I think I have one more question to answer before we chat about the $5 pattern for April. Two more questions, but they go together. So the first one is from Diana Quisling. She says, I know you have to plan months in advance. This is no joke. I think we turn in things about 1.5 years ahead of time. So yeah, we do plan pretty far ahead. She says, do you have plans for either another Christmas line or maybe a reprint of Starberry? Thank you for such great videos. So practical. I so appreciate all the practical tips you share with us each week. Keep up the great work. Blessings to you and your sister. Well, thank you for that question, and thank you for those wonderful comments. I appreciate that. I'm going to read the next question here from Karen Shear because it goes with this. She says, I love the Starberry fabric line and got a fat quarter bundle and a charm pack. I am wondering if the yardage in that collection will be available next Christmas. There were so many beautiful fabrics in the fat quarter bundle that I would like to get yardage to use. Thank you. Okay, so there are not any plans to reprint Starberry. So that means what is in quilt shops right now is what's there. So if you see something and you like it, you should just go ahead and get it if your budget allows. I understand that that's not always the case, but there's not plans to make another reprint of Starberry. I will probably have another Christmas line coming out at some point in time. I do not have one in the works right now. So it would be a little bit of time before there would be another Christmas fabric line from me. With that being said, there are always beautiful holiday fabric lines coming out from other designers. I know I have some of my favorites that I love when they do holiday fabric lines, so you can keep an eye out for other holiday fabric lines. Moda does a really nice job of making sure that we've got new and exciting holiday lines coming out every year. So I'm sure there's going to be something just beautiful coming out before too long that you might like just as well as Starberry or Hollyberry. That is my last question from you guys. Those are a lot of fun. I always enjoy reading down through. It helps me plan my videos, knowing what questions you guys have and how I can best help you with things you're wondering about. So I do appreciate when you guys send in those questions. The last thing we're going to talk about is the $5 pattern for April. It is this freshly cut mini quilt. I don't know if I've talked about this quilt too recently, but I think it's just adorable and such a cute project for spring. Here it is. I'm going to open up this pattern. So this is a mini quilt. So it is the mini pattern. I'm going to pull this out and we're going to talk about yardages first of all. Well, before I do that, this original quilt was made using Sugar Creek fabrics. So these are a little bit hard. Well, maybe more than a little bit hard to find. They've been out since, I'm not sure, 2019 maybe, 2000, something like that, 2018 or 19 I think is when Sugar Creek came out, so it's been a little bit. For this quilt, I hand quilted the quilting, which I thought was such a pretty touch here. I do have hand quilting tutorial videos here on the Coriander Quilts YouTube channel if that's something that you want to try, but that was so pretty. And now you also see that little jar flower block that I showed earlier in the video. This is the quilt that utilizes those blocks. It's just a cute little guy. So it is a charm pack quilt. So for that viewer asking about their Sundrop charm pack, this would be another option that you could do with your Sundrop's charm pack. You need a little bit of yardage for your stems, a little bit of yardage for your jar tops, background fabric, and then binding, backing, and batting. So this is the $5 pattern over in my Etsy shop, and it is the mini version of the larger freshly cut quilt. You saw the larger version hanging in the backdrop pretty recently. I think it was probably about 2 weeks ago or so. We had the larger version of freshly cut hanging in the backdrop. So if you love the look of this quilt, but are a little bit intimidated by the smaller piecing, it is available in a larger size as well. It's available, the pattern is also available PDF or the printed pattern. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to ask. I am going to have this listed right away today for $5. So if you haven't yet purchased the March $5 pattern of the month, it is still available for $5, and you could go ahead and throw this one in there for $5 as well. And then this one is going to stay $5 for the month of April. So there she is. Freshly cut mini, and I think it's just adorable. If you have any questions about this project, any questions about something you'd like me to chat about in a future video, feel free to leave those in the comments below. I do thank you so much for stopping by and watching, and I will catch you again next time.